After months of anticipation, the Ukrainian counteroffensive against Kherson has begun, with the Ukrainian bombardment being relentless against Russian positions before Ukrainian forces have smashed into their lines, even causing a major breakthrough. And so the questions are rolling out. What are the odds Ukraine are going to succeed and they're going to liberate the city of Kherson and push the Russians across the Dnieper River? How are the Russians responding? And is this a tipping point for the war that could spell the end of the Russian army in Ukraine? Let's talk about it. There have been rumors about the Kherson counteroffensive for months, about Ukraine setting up for a counteroffensive to take back Kherson. We've seen the Ukrainian military taking out bridges in advance and bombing ammo dumps and doing some things that would push towards the idea that they are preparing for a counteroffensive. But then we saw a lot of kind of cooling of these expectations, because as the months rolled on and we continued to hear rumors of the counteroffensive, eventually people started to manage their expectations. In fact, the news media started to do this as well, releasing pieces like, oh, you need to cool your position on Kherson, like, you know, try to manage your expectations, which is understandable. If you hear rumors about a so-called counteroffensive that's going to come out of somewhere in a few months, and you're sitting there and you're waiting, and month passes after month after month and nothing comes out of it, it's reasonable to start thinking maybe it's not coming, maybe it was all just rumors, maybe this was just to divert some Russian troops away from the Donbass, which some people started saying on social media, and even in a few articles they started speculating about that. But all of those rumors, all of those doubts were smashed on Monday when the Ukrainians finally launched their counteroffensive, smashing Russian artillery and Russian positions with Ukrainian artillery, Ukrainian rockets, Ukrainian HIMARS before their troops and armor and tanks smashed into Russian positions. I was actually in the city of Mykolaiv when this counteroffensive was launched, and I gotta tell you, I didn't know it was gonna be launched. I was actually in a restaurant when the announcement came of the counteroffensive and Ukraine started talking about it, and I started talking to my colleagues Philip and Pavel about it, and right when I exited the building, artillery started slamming into the ground around me. I think we actually have a clip of it. Where was that? Oh, get over here! Philip! Gotta stay near the walls. Ah, there it is. Yeah, a little late. Kilometers, let's get over there. Wait, fuck, what if they double tap it though? They could double tap it. We should still go over there. But since there's a lot of...
I think we should move from here. Maybe. Or just wait.
I think waiting is better. There's been a lot of talk of an offensive from this direction towards Kherson today. We're hearing reports of a major offensive taking place. But while that's happening, this city has been hit a decent amount. We actually, earlier today, we filmed an exchange between anti-air fire and a bombardment that the Russians were doing from on top of a hospital roof. We see people running away from the explosions, obviously. That was probably the closest we've ever had an explosion happen. That is just a block away. That was just a block away. That was 3 explosions a block away.
How you doing, Dylan?
Doing okay.
You all right? Okay. If that
No.
right, both of you. We're going behind that in a minute.
We need to get out of here?
Yeah.
Okay. So we probably just got hit like from a block away 6, 7 times. We're driving in the other direction because they're really determined to hit where we were standing. I mean, it was just a block away. We felt it. There's smoke rising in the air. I mean, that was close. Like if it just like the most slight adjustment would have been right on us. And so that was my real notification that the counteroffensive had begun, was the Russian targeting of civilian positions in the city of Mykolaiv, which is a war crime, by the way. As far as I know, that's the only footage that's out of this war crime. So I'm very happy I was able to document that for historical purposes, definitely since 2 people died and 20 were injured in those artillery strikes. But that was my introduction to the counteroffensive. Shortly after that, I drove away and, got out of the city because we wanted to stay safe. But during the nighttime, I could hear the bombardment all night. It kept me up, actually. And it wasn't the Russian bombardment of Ukrainian positions that kept me up. It was the Ukrainian bombardment of Russian positions, even though those Russian positions were miles away from where I was. And the same was true of the next night as well. This is when I was camping near the Dnieper River, somewhat close to the Zaporizhia power plant that has been in the news recently. I'm going to do a full story on that as well. I could hear all throughout the night, and it woke me up multiple times, the Ukrainian bombardment of Russian positions. The Russians were firing back too, but most of the sound was coming from the Ukrainian bombardment, and it woke me up. I would hear like 50 explosions in a 30-second time period. And so people were asking me, Dylan, is this counteroffensive serious? Yes, it was serious. I heard it and I felt it in the ground as well. And the Ukrainians wanted everybody to know that they were serious too. That's also why they were releasing some propaganda that was, well, quite terrifying to say the least. At least if you're a Russian invader, that is.
Похуярится все, что только можно. Прорвали первую линию обороны.
Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run. Bang, 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 bang goes the farmer's gun. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, 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 run.
Now, if you are a Russian military blogger, the reaction to this has been, to say all over the place would be an understatement, but there's really two main reactions from Russian military bloggers to the announcement of this counteroffensive at the start of it. One, just complete denial. What counteroffensive? I don't know what you're talking about. There is no war in Ba Sing Se. And the other reaction, which is, to put it lightly, panic, 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 please, oh my god, what is going on? Oh my god, please, no, stop, 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 Putin, do something, do something, do something, to put it lightly. Now, talking about this counteroffensive is going to be difficult for me for a few reasons, but the main reason is because the Ukrainian government has released a statement saying that they want people to go dark on this counteroffensive, and I intend to respect that statement. And so what they want us to do is not post the positions of Ukrainian soldiers, don't, reveal Ukrainian plans, don't share stuff that could get Ukrainian soldiers or Ukrainian civilians hurt. And so for today's video, I'm going to be showing very limited resources that I've pre-screened. These resources have either been like approved by people that I've put them in front of and they said, yeah, this is going to be no risk, or this information is so widely known that me sharing it on my show is pointless, or it's from like Russian sources, so they already know anyway. So it's like, okay, it is what it is. But that's why you're not going to see a lot of combat footage today of the offensive. Not because none of it exists, even though less exists than usual, but because I have no interest in undermining the Ukrainian military's efforts to take back and liberate Kherson. Always follow good OPSEC. The Ukrainians have actually set up this counteroffensive quite well. For about a month, maybe two, they've been targeting Russian bridges over the Dnieper River. These bridges are the main logistical line for the Russian army to resupply their positions in Kherson if they want to get in heavy equipment like tanks, artilleries, the guns for artillery pieces that they're going to need to replace, because, you know, when you fire so many pieces of artillery, eventually the artillery barrel, the gun of it, becomes kind of, worthless, and so they need to replace that. They need to bring heavy artillery in, they need to bring missiles, and, the whole shebang. And by taking out these bridges and making it so only pedestrians can cross by peppering it with holes and destroying it, it makes it a lot more difficult for the Russians to resupply their positions, and also more difficult, and this is a real disaster for the Russians if this comes to fruition, makes it a lot more difficult for the Russians to transport the heavy equipment out. Let's say that all their positions crumble and they have to flee over the Dnieper River. It's going to be very difficult for them to get their tanks, heavy artillery, and heavy equipment out if they can't get it over the bridges. Now, that doesn't mean that they have no options. They can ferry their equipment across the river, or they can get pontoon bridges. But those have also been targeted by HIMARS and artillery as well. And all Russian entrances and exits are currently under Ukrainian fire control, constantly being targeted by Ukrainian artillery and Ukrainian missiles, which makes it difficult for the Russians to use this pontoon bridge strategy. Not to mention, even if they are successful with using pontoon bridges and ferries, it's still going to be 10 times harder for them to resupply than if they were using the bridge they were using beforehand, before, it got smashed by Ukrainian artillery. So the Ukrainians have targeted the logistical lines of the Russians very effectively, making it more difficult for them to operate in Kherson. This is on top of the fact that they, of course, have destroyed ammo dumps left and right. I mean, there's a million videos online of ammo dumps going up in flames due to Ukrainian HIMARS systems. Made in the US of A, of course. So largely, the Ukrainians have been working for the last few months, building up, shaping for this counteroffensive, if we can use that term, by trying to cut off Russian logistics and, the Russian war machine from the Russian troops in Kherson. And they've been largely effective in doing that. And on the dawn of this offensive, they had a very heavy bombardment against Russian positions all throughout Kherson, whether it be ammo dumps, whether it be Russians' forward operating positions, which is, the front line, the actual front line, whether it be transportation of troops and munitions inside Kherson, Russian bases, communication centers, just anything in Kherson that moves and is Russian, they have targeted. And that has helped set up the offensive quite effectively as well. I would say the Ukrainians have done a great job at setting this up. Actually, in fact, I want to bring this up. The Ukrainians have actually practiced war games with American intelligence, trying to figure out what would be the best way to launch a counteroffensive in Kherson. So they have been preparing and planning this for a long period of time. And they could have launched this much earlier with less prep and just kind of dumped as many soldiers as they could at this. But it probably would have meant more casualties, would have meant a higher cost, and it meant they couldn't have had so much concentrated firepower at the same time at one position, which has been very effective at not only getting gains, but shaking up the Russian morale. I do have a map that I can show you guys to give you an idea of how the offensive is shaping up. Now, again, I'm following good OPSEC here. This map gets its sources from either Russian sources, so the Russians already know it, so they already know the Ukrainians have captured this or launching an attack from here, so, there's no, intelligence risk by me sharing this, or, generally already well-known reliable reporting is how we're getting this information. It was made by Nathan Rooser, good guy on Twitter, you should check him out. So you can see that there are 3 axes of attacks on the front line. The entire front line is largely in combat right now with the Ukrainians launching offensives. And from what we've heard, there's been breakthroughs, effective breakthroughs, as reported by the Institute for the Study of War. That means that Russian forward operating positions, which are some of the most entrenched positions in Kherson, this is the position they build up to make sure they can hold against something like this happening. They have been smashed by Ukrainian artillery, Ukrainian rockets, and Ukrainians have captured them all throughout the front line, meaning that the Russian front line has collapsed. That doesn't mean that they're going to swarm into Kherson and just take all the positions and the city of Kherson's gonna fall in like 3 or 4 days. But it does mean that the most difficult positions to take, the most entrenched positions on the front line, the positions that the Russians have been building up to stop something like this from happening, have largely been taken all across the front line. Now, this doesn't mean, like I said before, they're going to now push all the way to the city of Kherson and take it in the next 24 to 72 hours. That's not going to happen. What it does mean is that they've taken one of the most difficult stages of this operation and completed it. They've done it. They've smashed the Russian front line, which is heavily entrenched, and now they can prepare for the next stage of the operation, which is taking the positions behind what was formerly the Russian forward operating position. They need to entrench where they are now that they've smashed the most defensible positions that the Russians had on the front line. Now that they've taken that, they need to entrench because they need to prepare for Russian counteroffensive because they don't want to lose those forward operating positions. They don't want to lose those well-entrenched, those well-made defensive positions. They don't want to lose that because that could spell possible strategic disaster, even though it's already a tactical disaster. Now, I do want to be clear, because even though this is good news and the launch of this counteroffensive means that the Ukrainians believe that they have enough troops to take back Kherson and they've started the operation, and it's all fine and dandy on that front. I do want to warn you guys, though, that the battle ahead is going to be extremely difficult. It's not going to take weeks. It's probably going to take months for us to see the long-term reward from these offensive maneuvers, eventually leading to the capture of a city like Kherson. If that capture occurs, hopefully it does. It's going to take a while. Not to mention the geography for this offensive is terrifying for the average Ukrainian soldier. There's some footage I can show you here of actually Ukrainian soldiers behind Ukrainian tanks, which have to advance forward across these long fields, which divide Russian positions from Ukrainian positions. And they need to use these Ukrainian tanks for cover as they advance. Now, to be clear, this is much better than what the Russians did earlier in the war, because you need to support and flank tank your tanks with soldiers in order to stop them from getting ambushed and overwhelmed from people, you know, taking out the tank from the sides or using anti-tank munitions to ambush it, because when you have infantry supporting it, then you can back it up and it's not as easy to ambush these vehicles. Even though they're using their tanks more effectively than the Russians were early on in the war, it's still going to be a difficult task, and a lot of people are going to die during this counteroffensive, and it's going to be really tragic to see the casualties coming in. But from a strategic perspective, it is necessary in order to capture back Kherson and smash the Russian army in this location, pushing them across the Dnieper River. If the Ukrainians pull this off, I cannot emphasize enough how massive this would be. And so when people say, oh, a tipping point in the war, we don't know if today or yesterday or Monday, when the counteroffensive was launched, is going to be the tipping point of the war. But if they capture Kherson, it will be. It 100% will be a tipping point. So what we saw on Monday was the start of possibly a tipping point in the war. And I want to manage your expectations when it comes to that, because progress is going to take time. I know a lot of people are coming out with a lot of conflicting reports of, oh, the counteroffensive has failed. Oh, the counteroffensive has succeeded. Oh, the counteroffensive has failed. All I can say to you is wait, wait, wait. Ukrainians have a go dark order on giving out information on Kherson. The news reporting that would usually be done on this counteroffensive is not being done because of that go dark order, because they're not letting as many reporters near the front line to report on every village being captured, every city being captured. They're slowly dribbling out information. And Russian military bloggers who are, you know, talking about the counteroffensive obviously have an obvious bias. And so them coming out and saying, oh, the counteroffensive has failed, or oh, they've recaptured all of this, because the Russians have tried to recapture it, but from the reports that I've read, have largely failed to recapture most of the positions that the Ukrainians have captured. You're going to see a lot of conflicting reports. You're going to see it all over the place, from Russian military bloggers to the OPSEC people not going dark. All I can advise you is to wait, because there's not going to be a lot of great reliable reporting on this in the near future, and these types of operations take time. They're not like that. Please wait, and just keep your hopes up. Send good wishes to the Ukrainian army. I do want to say, in reference to the war crime that I saw in Mykolaiv when I was there, 2 people died from those strikes that I experienced. 20 were injured. It was a tragedy. And what was hit there was civilian areas of the city. There was no Ukrainian military position in that area I was. And so what I witnessed was the deliberate targeting of civilians. When earlier in the day, I even interviewed the director of a local Mykolaiv hospital whose trauma center was blown up by the Russian army, meaning that the people who are injured there can't even go to a trauma center to get the proper treatment locally. And many of them probably had to be transported out of the city to get treatment. A real disaster. Just barbaric behavior. But it's also a reminder about why this counteroffensive is important. Why it's important to capture Kherson, to make it more difficult for the Russians to hit Kherson like that with artillery, for them to brutalize the civilian population of Mykolaiv, and bringing us one step closer to the end of the war and the victory that Ukraine desperately needs for its struggle for independence. Good luck to the Ukrainian counteroffensive, and stay vigilant, and remember, keep good OPSEC. If you learn something you probably shouldn't know, keep it to yourself. The walls have ears. Thank you all for watching. I'm in Ukraine reporting from the ground, so if you could support the channel, all that money will go to my reporting. I'm especially pushing my Patreon right now. If you have any money that you could spare, even if it's just a coffee a day, I would deeply appreciate you supporting my Patreon. I also stream on Twitch. I have a Twitter account where I tweet many of the photos that I've taken during my journeys in Ukraine, and you can also join our Discord. I hope you all have a blessed weekend. Stay vigilant, guys.